My sister had left me children from her previous marriage, but she went to a child-free wedding, and when I heard about it from Reddit, I took the children, went to them, and hey everyone, I've been quietly hanging around on Reddit for a while and never really shared my own story here, but today I just feel the need to let everything out. So my sister VJ, let's call her Sarah VJ, has been a constant source of stress in my life. We never got along. She's quite manipulative and tends to display narcissistic traits. Sarah was born prematurely, which seemed to trigger a protective streak in my parents. Unfortunately, this meant that throughout my life, I often felt overlooked. They would forget to attend my school plays or basketball games, and even neglected to pick me up from them. Birthday gifts were another sore point. While Sarah received thoughtful presents from our parents, which would make her smile, I would receive gifts like books or teddy bears, which I didn't even like. It's been a consistent theme of feeling overshadowed and neglected by my own sister. Dealing with my parents' wrongdoings was one thing, but my sister took it to another level, reveling in their favoritism. She would exploit their bias against me. For instance, she tore my favorite dress to shreds while I was asleep, just because a guy she had a crush on asked me out instead of her. I was horrified and couldn't hold back the tears because I really loved that dress. When I reported it to my parents and they confronted her, she immediately played the victim card, crying and claiming she liked the guy first, and that I was knowingly doing this to her since I hated her. To my dismay, my parents felt sorry for her after her sob story, and suggested I avoid guys that my sister had a crush on to spare her feelings. It felt incredibly unjust since it wasn't even my fault that the guy liked me. In another instance, I put in a lot of effort to persuade my parents to take me to Disneyland for my birthday, since I was an adventurous kid. However, Sarah got wind of it, and decided she wanted to go to Disneyland for her birthday as well. Because her birthday came before mine, my parents gave in to her request. She didn't even sit on half of the rides, and I knew she chose this just to spite me. As a result, for my birthday, my parents took me out to our usual restaurant spot for a birthday dinner. I was so disappointed with them, but my parents told me that there was no point in going to Disneyland again in the same year. As we grew up, Sarah just got worse. She would always give me backhanded compliments like, "Your face looks better with your glasses," or, "You have a boy crush? I thought you were a lesbian." Growing up, I always tried not to stand out too much. However, unlike me, Sarah was everyone's favorite. She pretended to be kind and helpful to everyone, but behind closed doors was an absolute nightmare to me. She was sometimes nice to me only when she needed something from me, and after getting what she wanted, she would go back to ignoring me or bullying me. Her expertise in making me feel insecure extended beyond my looks to the people I dated. At 17, I had my first boyfriend, but Sarah managed to plant doubts in my mind about him, telling me how he was too good-looking for me and that he would eventually break up with me. So it was better if I broke up with him first. Every time my boyfriend would come over to visit me, she would get very close to him or try to touch his arms and laugh forcefully. Understandably, my boyfriend at that time was quite uncomfortable. After a few months of Sarah planting doubts in my head, I decided to break up with him. Now, when I look back, I understand it was completely wrong for me to treat him that way. Since he seemed to be a genuinely nice guy. Later, as I pursued a degree in psychology in college in a different state, I would return home for holidays only to be subjected to more of Sarah's sly and undermining comments. The toxic atmosphere continued to persist. At 25, Sarah met her husband John, and they both decided to get married after 2 years of dating. She announced to everyone's surprise her upcoming nuptials with John, which was a shock to everyone since she had been dating other guys on the down low, and some of us knew about it. However, we were happy that she was finally settling down with a decent guy. Anyways, Sarah decided to designate me to be her maid of honor. My parents were overjoyed at the news that I was going to be a part of the wedding, while I had the completely opposite reaction. I knew that being her MOH wasn't going to be easy, and I was proved right. Sarah consistently used this position as a means to control and manipulate me. She would frequently threaten to demote or remove me from the role if I did anything that she didn't like, making the entire experience stressful. Whenever she sought my opinion, I, true to my nature, would provide an honest answer. However, each time she would explode, deflect blame onto me, and engage in yelling fits. Faced with her volatile reactions, I adopted a strategy of staying silent to avoid saying anything that might escalate the situation further. I simply couldn't tolerate the verbal abuse and preferred to keep the peace. One day at lunch, we were discussing wedding plans, and I simply asked whether the MOH would be wearing a different dress just to get a better idea of her vision. She started yelling, saying I was making everything about me by assuming I was still the MOH. We moved on to overnight guests and where they would sleep. My mom said it would be a good idea to book Airbnb as well in advance, and I agreed. My sister completely lost it, saying she'd had this conversation with her fiancé already, and how they would be booking hotel rooms, and if we wanted Airbnbs, then we could book them on our own. Then she kept yelling at me for not using my brain enough and saying things like how I should discuss with her before agreeing to whatever others want since I am her MOH, and I basically work for her. I shut down, trying to diffuse the situation, so then she went on about how I'm being negative and trying to have an attitude. My mom tried to interrupt, but she talked over her and kept saying how she did not want to deal with such an immature MOH like me, and how I needed to do better. At this point, I was just quietly taking it since I just wanted her to stop yelling. Eventually, she decided it was time to leave, intending to head back to her apartment and for me to return home. As we reached the car, we sat in the parking lot, and she continued yelling at me for another 10 minutes, rehashing the same grievances. At that moment, all I wanted was to escape the situation, but my car was a 20-minute walk away, leaving me with no immediate way to leave. Eventually, the wedding day arrived, and while the ceremony itself went relatively well, my sister Sarah managed to find reasons to fight with me over trivial matters during the reception. She would openly yell at me in front of everyone, making the atmosphere uncomfortable and strained. I noticed her glaring at me between the festivities, whether it was about the music selection or the waitstaff not meeting her standards for serving drinks. When it was my turn to give the speech, I stood up, hoping to share heartfelt words. However, Sarah gestured impatiently for me to get it over with. Later, she confronted me, criticizing my speech for delving into her childhood. According to her, I was intentionally trying to embarrass her, in front of her in-laws. I was crushed because everyone else seemed to appreciate my speech, and even our parents had no complaints. The morning after the wedding, as the chaos finally settled, I realized the extent of the anxiety I had been feeling for the past couple of months, and it was all because of her. I finally realized that she had been the problem all along in my entire life. I wish I could have been bold enough to drop out of the wedding. However, I knew my family would have blamed me. Now that the nightmare was over, I could finally shift my focus to my career. Eventually, a few months later, I met my current boyfriend, Mike. As we started dating and decided to move in together after a year, my parents were happy for me. However, my sister expressed her disapproval to me, claiming that Mike was too nerdy. In her eyes, he was just a computer geek. However, the truth was that Mike worked in IT and earned 3 times what I did. She had no idea about any of this, and I honestly didn't care. I was in love with this guy regardless of what she thought. One day, my life took an unexpected turn when my sister announced at a family dinner that she was pregnant. Now, if you are wondering how this affected me at all, well, my sister announced next how she couldn't wait to see me become an aunt, because apparently she was going to need my help a lot during this tough time. I was shaken by her words. She was an adult who was going to have a child, and instead of asking her own husband or our parents for help, she expected me to babysit her child. You see, there had never been any children around me, so I had zero experience with them. I've honestly always felt totally alienated from kids, and have never felt any desire to be around them. I was quite happy, and at peace with the fact that I didn't want to have children. Hence, her words really freaked me out. I felt kind of trapped in that moment. I knew she would find some way to force me to babysit her child, especially because I have a face, but then go behind my back and strain our relationship even more. After that, I got really pissed. This started to affect my mental health, and Mike started to notice the same. He and I had a talk where I completely broke down. He urged me to stand up for myself and my family. So the next time I was called for babysitting duties, I point-blank refused. Sarah and Mom would call me, urging me to do this for family, but I put my foot down and told them to go to hell. I felt like I had done enough and didn't want anything to do with my sister or her child ever again. I stopped all contact with my sister. She would show up at my door after calling me in vain, but I would still refuse to open up. My parents would also force me to forgive her, but eventually they gave up when they realized that I wasn't going to budge. I would talk to my parents sometimes, but that's that. This went on for 2 years, and she went on to have another child with John. Last year, my mom called me to tell me that Sarah and John were going through a divorce. This was quite unexpected. Even though I didn't want anything to do with her, I was still surprised by the news. When I pried a bit further, I found out from my mom that Sarah had been sleeping around with her coworkers. Apparently, John had found all these inappropriate messages on her second phone, which she would always hide from him. He had then taken all the evidence and talked with a lawyer to file for a divorce. Sarah was apparently completely blindsided by it since John right away handed her divorce papers. When she tried to reason with him, he told her how he knew everything. This made Sarah beg him for forgiveness, but he left her. I was quite shocked at the turn of events, although looking back, John was definitely too good for her. So I'm kinda glad that he is out of this mess now. After Sarah's divorce was done, she had to move back in with our parents. I would hear complaints from them about how Sarah would stay out all night and come home in the morning drunk and smelling of booze. She was eventually let go of her job as well because she never went to work on time. This made her turn to booze more and more. My parents would have to take care of her children while she would be out having fun. This had been going on for months. In contrast to her life, my life was going well. Mike and I adopted a dog, and we are proud pet parents. We even bought a house together with both our names on the deed, and have been slowly moving in. We have discussed the possibility of marriage soon, but there's absolutely no rush. We know that we are going to be in each other's lives forever, so we are taking our sweet time. When I had a housewarming party, I did have to invite my parents. Unfortunately, without asking me, they also brought my sister and her kids with them. I was pissed seeing her, but I didn't want to make a scene in front of everyone, so I kept quiet. Mike welcomed them in and served them drinks while I glared at my parents. My dad came up to me and sheepishly told me how he didn't want to bring my sister, but our mother wanted us to reconcile and thought this would be the perfect opportunity. My sister loudly announced to her kids to go and give me a hug since I was their aunt. I smiled politely as they hugged me. Sarah then started telling me how I should be a more involved aunt since the kids hardly recognized me, and how I should put in more effort. I was grinding my teeth to stop myself from saying something to embarrass her in front of everyone. Throughout the party, I noticed Sarah drinking wine continuously. She wasn't the least bit concerned about what her children were up to. Her kids, on the other hand, were extremely rowdy. They chased after my dog, trying to kick it or didn't want to risk it. So, I decided to keep it simple and made some sandwiches with the ingredients I had. Thankfully, they ate without any complaints, and I felt a small sense of accomplishment in handling the situation. As the hours passed, I kept checking my phone, expecting a call or message from Sarah to come and pick up her kids. But there was nothing. I tried calling her, but she didn't answer. It was getting later, and I started to worry about how long this emergency would last. Eventually, I decided to put the kids down for a nap since they were getting restless and sleepy. During this quiet moment, I decided to check social media to pass the time. To my shock, I saw a post from Sarah. She had tagged herself at a friend's child-free wedding, smiling and having a good time. It became glaringly obvious that there was no emergency at work VDJ. Sarah had lied to me. She used me as a free babysitter while she attended an event. My frustration and anger surged back. I felt utterly disrespected and manipulated once again. By the time Sarah finally showed up, it was early evening. She looked happy and relaxed, clearly having enjoyed herself. As she walked in, she casually thanked me for watching the kids. I confronted her about the wedding post I saw, demanding an explanation. Sarah tried to downplay it, saying it was a last-minute invitation and she had no other choice. She even had the nerve to tell me how I should understand because she deserved a break. I was furious. I told her that using her children as an excuse to dump her responsibilities on me while she partied was beyond selfish. I made it clear that this would be the last time she pulled a stunt like this, and that I would no longer be available for her to take advantage of. Sarah's reaction was typical VDJ. She played the victim, accusing me of being unsupportive and heartless. She even tried to guilt-trip me by saying how hard it is to be a single mother. But I was done. I stood firm and told her to leave and not come back unless she was willing to change her ways and respect my boundaries. After she left, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. I was relieved that I had finally stood up for myself, but sad that it had come to this point with my own sister. I knew my parents would likely hear a twisted version of the events from Sarah, but I was prepared to deal with it. Moving forward, I decided to focus on my own happiness and well-being. Mike and I are planning our future together, and I'm excited about what lies ahead. I won't let Sarah's manipulative behavior dictate my life anymore. I deserve to live free from her toxic influence, and I will do whatever it takes to protect my peace. Couldn't take any risks of giving them meals without checking with Sarah first. I dialed Sarah's number, hoping for a swift answer. However, there was no response. I tried again after some time, only to be met with her voicemail. With no other option, I decided to be direct with the kids. I explained that their mom seemed busy at work and wasn't picking up her phone. Trying not to alarm them, I gently asked if they had any known allergies or specific dislikes when it came to food. The oldest, while talking about her preference, let slip that maybe her mom was busy at the wedding, which is why she was not picking up my calls. I furrowed my brow and questioned how she knew that. She hesitated before admitting that she overheard Sarah discussing it with a friend on their drive over to my place. The pieces fell into place, and a surge of anger coursed through me. I thanked the kids for their honesty and reassured them that everything would be fine. I immediately called my parents to get to the bottom of this. After much cajoling, my mother finally admitted the truth. Sarah had indeed gone to a wedding, which was supposed to be child-free, with her new boyfriend who had no idea that she was a mom to 2 kids. My mother tried to justify Sarah's actions by saying things like how men didn't like dating single mothers, so she had chosen to keep her kids a secret. However, I was furious because she had lied to me once again. My sister had manipulated me, exploiting my willingness to help for her own convenience. I then checked Sarah's social media to verify the information. She had posted a few stories on her Instagram from the wedding. She was smiling and day drinking. I shook my head in disappointment as I saw her Instagram. I realized that she didn't have a single picture of her children. My sister, a mother of 2, was actively pretending to be single, denying her own children a place in her public life. Later, when Sarah came to pick up her kids, we had a huge fight. I made it clear to her that I wanted no part in her deception, and warned her that the next time she left her kids with me, I would involve Child Protective Services. Sarah was pissed hearing this and started to abuse me. But Mike, who had by then returned back from the office, immediately intervened and threatened to call the police on her, which led to her leaving tries to show up unannounced. I would be prepared. The steps I've taken to protect my mental health and well-being are significant, and while it hasn't been easy, it's been necessary. I've blocked Miranda's number and her social media accounts to ensure she can't reach out to me. I've also made it clear to my parents that my boundaries are firm and non-negotiable. Since my last update, I've focused on my relationship with Mike and our plans for the future. We've discussed our next steps, including the possibility of getting married, and we feel more united than ever. My career is also on track, and I've been dedicating time to my hobbies and interests, which has been incredibly fulfilling. Despite the tension, I'm grateful for the support system I have, especially Mike, who has stood by me through all of this. My parents' acknowledgement of the situation and their support have been a crucial part of my healing process. I hope that with time we can all find a way to move forward, but for now, I'm prioritizing my peace and happiness. To anyone going through a similar situation, I encourage you to stand firm in your boundaries and prioritize your well-being. It's not easy, but it's essential for your mental health. Remember that you deserve to be treated with respect and kindness, and it's okay to distance yourself from toxic relationships, even if they are within your family. If she pulls the same stunt again, I can take legal action against her. Update 3. It's been 4 months since my last update. I've been hounded by people on Reddit to post an update. The reason I have been MIA is that I decided to get off social media and uninstalled all my apps. My mental health has improved considerably, and I have also been going to therapy. I've been focusing on my own personal growth. Mike and I are still going strong. He surprised me with a proposal last month when we were having a romantic date on the beach. It was honestly so sweet to see him tremble when he went down on one knee and took out the ring. I can't believe that I'm finally going to be marrying this wonderful man in a few months. I have told my parents about it. Although we talk very little, my parents are extremely happy for me and adore Mike as well. I have received news that Sarah has moved out of my parents' house after they finally lost their patience with her when she continued to come home late after partying and drinking the whole day. She, of course, fought with them, but in the end had no choice but to move out. My parents have offered to pay her 6 months' rent, after which she is on her own. Dave does pay her child support money every month, but I doubt it would cover her personal expenses. I hope for the sake of her kids that she decides to grow up and be responsible for once in her life. This experience has taught me a lot about setting boundaries and standing up for myself. It's been a challenging journey, but I'm proud of the progress I've made. To anyone else dealing with similar family dynamics, know that it's okay to put yourself first and protect your own well-being. You deserve to live a life free from manipulation and toxicity.